Hello, everybody, and welcome to another week's edition of the WrestleWatch podcast, the only podcast where we talk about free agency in the world of professional wrestling. I am Ryan.
Yes, and I am Doug. As I said, this is the WrestleWatch podcast. Um, you can follow us on the WrestleWatch YouTube channel, where we stream the show live every week, or find us on your podcast catcher of choice. You can follow us on Blue Sky and X, where we post updates, including our meticulously curated WrestleWatch tier list, and on Substack for long form articles, where we analyze the likelihood of talents leaving, joining, and of course, jumping between various wrestling promotions with a special focus on WWE, AEW, New Japan, and Stardom. And there is a lot of news this week in the world of jumping, leaving, and joining other promotions.
Yeah, it's been, I think it's been a busier week than usual. Last week we did not do a free agency podcast. We tried out a reviews podcast that we're cooking up about just looking back monthly at matches rather than hot takes because we're usually not. I don't think that we're usually in the business of hot takes other than when we do our hot takes at the end of episodes.
We have them
Um,
fun. We do them in a fun way, but we're not typically the typical wrestling podcast where they're talking about reviews and what they thought about storylines and things like that. That's usually just not what we do.
yeah, so this other one is just going to be kind of like slower paced reviews, looking at matches long term more so. Yeah, but we haven't had a an official hot stove free agency podcast in 2 weeks. But even then, I would say that we didn't really have much to say last week on free agency updates. But this week seems to be a lot of things happening. In fact, a lot of things happening within the last 24 hours.
Yeah, more like 12, honestly. It was a crazy end of the night with a lot of WWE releases, and we'll be getting to that shortly. We also have some other topics to talk about, including the fallout from the Royal Rumble, which obviously had a lot of impact for what we do here on the podcast. So I guess we could jump right into it, right?
Yeah, let's get into it. First, we just wanted to show people on YouTube, here's what the tier list had been looking like as of the last time that we joined you. If you want to pause the video, you can do that and look at the tier list. For the people on audio, it doesn't matter because, of course, we're going to change it this week. First off, we just wanted to give a little bit of updates, and I guess this is going to be I guess this is going to be hotter takes, relatively speaking, about the latest round of releases from WWE. It's a little abnormal for them to do releases at this time of year. I would say it's usually in April during Mania season, or like after Mania they'll do releases. But this is the list as of right now. These are the people that we know have been released by WWE or have been given their served their notice of impending release after 90 days is maybe a better phrasing. The list is Cedric Alexander, Paul Ellering, Authors of Pain, Sonya Deville, and Blair Davenport.
Yeah. There's some interesting names on there that I think a lot of people maybe expected and maybe some that weren't so surprising. Um, I think the big thing that I take away from this is that WWE, because I think there was like a time period where WWE was trying to lock up everyone. That was right when AEW launched, and then they kind of pulled back on that. And then it felt like they started doing it again. And now it feels like maybe they're pulling back on that again because we haven't really had a big round of releases in a while. And I mean, granted, this isn't exactly a big round like how they had, like, 3 years ago where they released like 20 people. Um, but still, this is feels more significant than they've had in the past.
Yeah, I would say that this is like when we compare it to, I think a few months ago, maybe a year ago by now, we had the release cycle where like Baron Corbin, or he was like not released but let his contract lapse. I don't think that it was as I'm not sure if big is the right word either. But I think that there are some interesting names on this list that I think are going to have an impact on others' free agency, and possibly also impact on just storylines in other companies, possibly even still. But that's so. How about we get into what's the name
No,
on this list
but
that's really
real
popping out to you?
real quick before we go into each one, before we go into them individually, can I just ask a larger, broad question that someone brought up as a joke, but I kind of think might be not a joke? Um, what do we think that there's anything to the idea that Alexa Bliss and Kevin Owens got their big contracts, and this is maybe an effort on TKO's part to keep the labor budget from going too high before the earnings call?
I mean I think it is possible, because this is. I mean, Cedric Alexander's been main roster for quite some time, as is Sonya Deville. So they do have, I wouldn't say big contracts, but they have sizable contracts comparatively to Blair Davenport, who was just called up the last draft and didn't really get much to do. But they got, I guess they got her contract changed to the 90-day. Um, Authors of Pain, I wouldn't say that they necessarily have a big. I wouldn't presume that they have a big contract, but I would say that when you add up all of these people total, I still think it's a drop in the bucket for what we're looking at for like a Kevin Owens increase.
Yeah. And I think, oh yeah, and I'm certainly not implying that like all their contracts would add up to that. I'm just thinking if that's part of the mindset where they're just still looking at this as a balancing act. So I just think it's interesting that we have these two big contracts signed within a very short period of time, and then suddenly I see them trying to balance the budget on the other end.
Yeah, and as Luke, our good friend Luke, is in the chat, he's mentioning that yeah, the it's kind of weird when WWE just boasted that the this past week's Royal Rumble was the highest non-mania gate ever for their company. We had in the Rumble match, Pure Fusion Collective is the group that had Sonya Deville in it. And they were given a really big spot in the women's rumble. It seemed like they were going to be getting a big push. They were doing some media. I saw where they were pushing that like Sonya Deville was the first out gay wrestler for WWE. Uh, and this is all last week that they were doing this stuff. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they cut her. And yeah, they're showing record profits, record gates. So yeah, it does come off. It doesn't come off the best to I would say to people that are paying attention is maybe the best way I would put it. I'm not saying that not everybody's not paying attention, but just that like I think if you're not trying to pay attention and you don't see something like this, you might not even see it happening because they've kind of flooded the zone with so much like, oh yeah, we're making the most money ever kind of stuff.
It's eyebrow raising. I mean, I don't want to say too much specifically on Sonya Deville yet, but it's something that I'm like, I think it's odd.
Well,
Just
and also something to point out with Blair Davenport, that I recall was that she was supposed to be given some sort of push on SmackDown that seemed to be with the switch for SmackDown from a 2 hour to a 3 hour show, and now SmackDown is going back to being a 2 hour show. So that might be part of what's going on with that. But I have noticed there is a trend, it seems, of WWE kind of they've been calling some people up through the draft, in which case they then get their contract restructured to be from a 30-day to a 90-day window of like of a forewarning of notice of a impending release, which means that like they can call Blair Davenport up and then release her, and then it's an extra 60 days until she can go anywhere.
yeah, and I think that's that's very reasonable thing that I think that we could think that that's maybe what they're doing, that they're just extending them out for that purpose. But looking at these names, they're interesting names. Just and not in the sense that like, oh, I think they'd be interesting jump prospects. I honestly don't think any of them are any real big game changer names. And the ones that I do think are could make a bigger difference, I think are interesting because they're people that have had interactions with AEW or Tony Khan in the past and they didn't necessarily go well.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's like so part of me thinks that it's like it's still a situation where they're trying not to release anyone that's going to be valuable to AEW. And not to say they didn't none of these people could be valuable at AEW, but I look let's start with like Cedric Alexander, for example. He is very talented. I definitely see, the talk is that there are people within the AEW locker room that are pushing for him. They would like to use him. But having said that, he's someone who has got a little snippy with Tony Khan on Twitter before. And obviously, his wife has had very public issues with Tony Khan with her time in AEW
For
and
context, it's Big Swole.
Big Swole. Yeah. So for that reason, that one I could see being kind of a iffy situation because I think it's fair to say that Big Swole got to Tony Khan more than just about anyone because I don't think I've ever seen him just go on. I think that a lot of people, will go back and forth on whether or not Tony Khan should or should not be on Twitter and do things he does on Twitter and say things he does on Twitter and be a poster. But I think it's fair to. I think most people were kind of taken aback by his comments on Swole, where he basically said that he fired her because she's not a good wrestler.
Well, and it wasn't even really that she wasn't even fired. It was just that they
You're
didn't
right.
pick up her contract when she was a pay per appearance deal.
You're right. That's correct. That's fair correction. Yeah, it was just not a pickup again.
Yeah, it's. I think that that was also like that's like 5 years ago by now, right? So it's such a long time of a gap. Um, some people that got counter mad at Tony on Twitter are now signed to AEW anyway.
Like Leo Rush,
So
for example.
yeah, so like I think that it's like kind of like it's over. It's like it's in the past. I don't think that it's and then when you look at also the way that if we are to like consider what people were saying at the time about Tony's booking with regards to black talent, it's changed a lot since then. I think that casual observers now even are pointing out that there seems to be a far worse problem at WWE right now with the presentation of black men, or the access to opportunity for them even, than exists in AEW. So I think that like things have changed a lot since then with the comments from Big Swole with the um, quasi release of her, such that I think that it might be in the past and buried for people that might have been concerned about that situation before. The one thing that I would say with Cedric Alexander is I'm sure that there are people that are pushing for him, and I'm sure those people like hurting people. Um, the thing is that like that's this is where I was saying like this might affect storylines a little bit because I can see like the Hurt Syndicate folks pushing for him to get signed. Now the question mark there is I don't think it's necessarily the best booking decision to just redo the entire Hurt business in AEW with nobody that's from AEW originally. And in that case, it becomes then a question of like, well, is Cedric going to get signed then if that's all they're gonna do and they're not and they should probably have a homegrown AEW guy join the group as well if they do have somebody join. Well, then where's Cedric slot in AEW if not with the Hurt Syndicate?
And I'll say this: I'm not obviously we don't usually talk about or break down booking here, but in this situation, I think we can kind of tie it in. I think AEW, especially right now, is very heel heavy. Like they have a lot of very over heel acts and not not so many over babyface acts. And every single time that they kind of try lately to kind of make someone a baby face and give them a push for that, it's not really working. Mark Davis, they attempted it, didn't work, had to bring him back as a heel. Ricochet brought him in face, didn't work, had to turn him heel. And they're very, very light on the babyface side right now. And I don't think Cedric Alexander is going to be a scene. It's gonna be Ricochet all over again. Like I don't think if they're gonna bring him in, he's gonna be a strong face, especially not one you could push. Especially after everything he's kind of gone through. So I think it's also like a timing issue in the sense that I don't know that he's the right person. Or at least I don't know if it's the right time for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like so the thing about the Ricochet thing, and I think I've said it before, was like the issue was they brought this guy over from WWE and they just threw him in as a white meat babyface that has great matches, and like that, I think that they misjudged the AEW audience as being discerning in that regard. Like I don't think that AEW fans do love great matches, but unless you're doing like the best wrestler alive level of matches, like Takeshita did on his like initial white meat babyface run, you're not gonna get necessarily over, and it might even like have the crowd kind of reject you. So I think that it was good that they did pivot on Ricochet. But yeah, I think that like it's hard to just bring in a guy as just a pure baby face out of nothingness unless he is like the top of the card kind of person, I think, for AEW right now. So I think that that makes it a possible issue for somebody like Cedric Alexander.
And I think someone who works in a similar way to Cedric Alexander, that's already on the tier list, it would be someone like a Michael Oku. And I think Michael Oku's much better. And I think that he can pull off the baby face. I think he would be someone that would work really well right now. Not to say Cedric wouldn't, but I think that right now they need to prioritize baby faces. I would look at someone like him. I'd maybe even look at someone like Mustafa Ali. I think he can maybe pull it off, as odd, as strange as that is to say, because he's obviously been doing this weird heel president thing. Uh, but those are the people that I kind of jump out for me. I would I would even include I would even I'm going to get a little pushback on this, but I might even include someone like a Baron Corbin. Now, not as a babyface, but I'm just saying there's a lot of people that I would consider trying before I would try Cedric. And I don't like, to be clear, I'm not really a big Baron Corbin fan, but I just think in terms of like people you're going to bring in, I think I'd choose them over Cedric. So
So
I'm kind of low on Cedric. I think as I'm sitting here talking to myself, I'm convincing myself that yeah, I probably wouldn't bring in Cedric.
so Luke in chat is pointing out, well, Luke's view is like you would bring in Cedric to join Hurt Syndicate immediately, and so that yeah, like I think that that's the issue is like if you don't do that, then where does he fall? You know, and I think that that's where we've landed in this conversation is like you would probably have to bring him in then as a baby face, and then like where does he land becomes the question mark. And Luke also agrees that like yeah, Oku would be a great underdog baby face kind of guy. Like, and I think it's because also he is a certified 5-star stud of a wrestler that is young, that has a lot of potential. So like when you're looking at where AEW like AEW is in a rebuild is a way of looking at it. And you can like when we're talking in a little bit we're going to talk about Kevin Owens. Kevin Owens was like I don't know if Max Scherzer is the right analogy in baseball necessarily, but it's somewhere around that where it's like you know that if you sign him you're gonna get like an ace, but he's aging, you know. So he's going to give you a lot of quality innings. He's going to give you somebody to put up at the top of the rotation, and you're not going to have to worry about it at all. But you're not going to have him for long. And it looks like also, for that matter, it looks like Kevin Owens does have a clock going for his career. But somebody that, when you're looking at your team, then it's like that's you can get one of those guys, but if you rely on all of those guys, you're going to start to fall apart in that when that the clock ticks down. And if any of them get injured, you're really screwed. So I think that if AEW is rebuilding, they have to be looking at young talent and people that they can build up on. And like you look at a lot of these like last week's Dynamite, there was a very well received tag match between Takeshita and Fletcher versus Hounds of Hell, the former House of Black, Buddy Matthews and Brody King. And you have just one guy in that ring that was a former WWE guy, and he is somebody that is younger, relatively speaking, has a lot of potential, that wasn't necessarily seen as having been grasped in WWE. And then you have three guys. Two of them came over from Japan. One of them just came up through a different means in the American scene. And I think that that's kind of like the direction that things should be considered for with AEW going forward. So I'm not sure if bringing in a bunch of people that are older on the scale of things is going to be what they're going to be doing in the future. And it also seems like that, for that matter, WWE is doing a lot of defense with the older selection of talent anyway.
Yeah, let me frame it this way. So Hurt Business is Hurt Syndicate, forgive me, is an overact in AEW right now. Correct?
Oh, they are super over, and I think like also like just not to get too far into booking stuff, but like I think having the Guns be a first defense is actually a great idea for both teams even, and I think both of them I think Hurt Business are going to help a lot of people with how over they are.
Yeah. So I agree. I agree that they're overact. It's working very well. And so then here's my question. Is adding Cedric going to add anything of value? Is it going to get more over because Cedric's there?
I don't think it can get more over than it already is by Cedric Alexander being added to the act. I think that there are potential people on the roster right now for AEW, like Powerhouse Hobbs, like Ricochet, like Swerve, people in that mold that they're either already towards the top of the card or at the top of the card that you can have like a secondary ace for the Hurt Syndicate in addition to Bobby Lashley. That's the kind of person that I think that can make them even more over, but it's not going to be a young gun kind of character mold.
Yeah. Like if I was going to bring, I'll say this, and because here's my thing, I don't think adding Cedric to this group adds anything other than just like retreading what they've already done. If they were going to bring Cedric in as a surprise, I'm actually not with you guys kind of situation, I might be a little more into that just because I think then you're doing something different with Cedric. Because I really don't think if you're just going to bring him in to throw him in the group, I don't know that necessarily adds anything. And I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, because like I mean, when they were formulated in WWE previously, the way that they kind of worked it was like MVP was manager, part-time wrestler. You had Bobby as the ace, essentially, on singles only, and Cedric and Shelton were the tag team. But the way that they formulated in AEW, it still is Bobby as like your ace, but like they're a lot more fluid about tagging. It feels like, and it also feels like that Shelton has leveled up his position in the singles division much more than he was in WWE. So it's like, well, he's not the tag guy anymore. He's the singles guy that's just not as big of a singles guy as your other singles guy. It's kind of the Claudio kind of mold.
Yeah, I agree.
But the other name that I wanted to touch on this list is Blair Davenport. Because she, the former B. Priestley, formerly in AEW at the launch of AEW, left AEW during the pandemic due to travel issues and things of that nature. When NXT then started to sign a lot of people during the 2.0 push for NXT, they looked at a lot of people that were featured on AEW Dark and Elevation and things like that. They really stacked up the NXT women's roster via people that AEW just didn't sign, like Roxanne Perez, like I think Tatum Paxley, Ren Sinclair, I think, is her name now, and Blair Davenport is the other one. They really like stocked up their roster with that. I think that she is somebody that kind of pushes down a lot of other potential women's free agents on the tier list just by her being a potential signing for somebody like AEW. Or I think she could go back to Stardom even.
I I think that she going to the golden fields of Marigold is a realistic option because Rossi loved her, loved her. So I think that B Priestley back in Rossi's booking notebook, I think that I would not be stuck by that at all. Uh, Stardom, I don't know, maybe. I guess it's weird because she kind of left Stardom way before all this stuff happened with the company. I think it was like right shortly after Bushiroad bought him. Like she was there for a little bit, and obviously she got a massive push. She had the red belt for a while, but I feel like she wasn't around for all that drama that kind of was in the fallout after Bushiroad bought the company from Rossi. So I don't know where she stands with either company, but I would imagine that I know that for a fact that Rossi loves her and loves her still. So I could definitely see her going to Marigold. Going back to AEW though, I don't. I mean, I don't remember the specifics, but I know that she definitely had some backstage issues with people, and I don't know that. And then obviously, I think that her and Will are probably okay. I mean, they used to be an item for quite some time, but I imagine that they're okay.
I believe that they've said on the records similar to like the Darby Allin and um I always forget names now because it's like they have two names and everybody's
Yeah.
two names and it's so confusing. But
I know what you're talking about, though. Yeah,
yeah,
but it's
like
I feel like they're okay.
yeah, they're okay.
I have no reason to believe that that would be an issue.
Yeah, that factor of it I don't think is going to be an issue. I think that also if she had any issues backstage with AEW, if it's women that you're referencing, a lot of those people are gone from the original days of AEW. Honestly, like the roster has changed over so much in the women's division.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm interested. I think that the two names on this list that I think are the most interesting of possible additions to the tier list, and possibly be next week, is Cedric Alexander and Blair Davenport. Do you agree on that?
Yeah, those are the two. I would also consider Sonya Deville as someone that I would consider. And not in the sense, and the same, and I say this because I always thought that early on, before she even got a push in NXT, like early on, I thought she just had an aura about her. And I think that I would like to see, I'm not saying AEW should bring her in, but I would like to see her do some stuff like Bloodsport. I would like to see her in these different situations that are not produced like a WWE produced thing. Because as we saw, like Shayna Baszler came off completely different in Bloodsport. Marina Shafir comes off completely different in Bloodsport. And I don't think that we've seen a major company, really capture the magic of like Marina in Bloodsport because she is really fun to watch in Bloodsport. That's like her. She just fits there, and but we haven't figured out how to translate it over. And I'm convinced and I know that Mox has always been a big advocate for Marina Shafir, and obviously we see that now because he's put her in the group. So I think he sees it too because he's a big blood sport guy as well. He could see what blood sport is, and he's trying to find a way to make it transition over into AEW. I don't know that anyone has been able to figure it out yet. I don't know if anyone will, but I
So
think Sonya Deville is another one that I would kind of consider putting in that experimental lab to try to make it work because I see the vision, I really do, and I want someone to keep messing with it.
so I need to interrupt you because we have breaking news over the wire.
Oh, okay.
It's not over.
Oh,
Is Isla Dawn released by WWE? She was one half of the Unholy Union with Alba Fire.
Ah, okay.
Uh,
So
so she, just as backstory to people that might not be familiar with her work, she was a holder with the NXT tag belts in WWE with Alba Fire. She was trained by Big Damo and Malachi Black. Interesting names to see there, because one of those is definitely never going back to WWE, and one of them is possibly going back to WWE very soon. Scottish wrestler, was pretty. I think that her tag runs were pretty well regarded, even though they didn't get really good pushes in WWE. 31, so younger age now for women's wrestling. Now you can wrestle whenever. It's great. But yeah, that's a fun name that puts a wrench in things, I think. Of this discussion that you were just having about Sonya Deville.
I'll be honest, it's making me want to keep an eye on Alba Fire a bit more. Um, I mean, with all due respect to Isla Dawn, I don't know that I necessarily see a ton of interest in her. But if Alba Fire is released, I'm Tony Khan, I'm like banging down the door.
Yeah, her name, if on the Indies, if you weren't familiar with her, was Kaylee Ray, right?
Yes, Kaylee Ray. She's was genuinely I'm surprised that she has not gotten a bigger push because she's genuinely one of the greatest. I'm going on a limb. She's one of the greatest uh women's wrestlers in the English speaking world today. And she was before she signed. And I just don't think we ever really seen her given an opportunity to do what she could do.
Yeah, when she before she signed with WWE even, she was ranked number 18 on the PWI Women's 100 back in 2020.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, she's fantastic. I'm sorry we're talking about Alba Fire while we're supposed to be talking about Isla Dawn, but I mean, I don't really have a whole lot to add on Isla Dawn. I don't know that she ever really showed any. I don't think she was ever an incredible in-ring worker. I wasn't a big fan of her presentation, so I don't know that I see much going out with her.
Yeah, well, if we get any more updates as the podcast goes on, we'll interrupt with breaking news. But how about we talk about possibly the reason why some of those contracts got cut is the earnings report and Kevin Owens. So it was confirmed yesterday by Fightful. So what happened here, to back up, is that for a number of months now, it was presumed that Kevin Owens had a contract at least offered to him to re-sign with WWE. Some people were trying to put out there that he had already signed the contract. That does not seem to have been the case for the record. So he tweeted out something as a joke about his daughter's Girl Scout cookies, and saying, you know, it to help fund things for the next 5 years or so with wrestling. He said that he promised to wrestle for the next, and then he like mathed out exactly the end of a 5-year contract as dated by January 1st of this year. So some people, you know, it was a joke tweet. Some people took that as like, wait, did he resign though? Because like that's a very specific number to just joke around about. Sean Ross Sapp did ask around about it, and it was confirmed to him that Kevin Owens had actually signed for his contract to start at the Royal Rumble, so February 1st rather than January 1st. So Kevin's math, you're not that good, man. But yeah, so Kevin Owens, it sounds like it's a 5-year deal to stay with WWE, so that would keep him there through 2029, and into early 2030. We're looking at now. He would be, you know, on the older side by that time. He would be a grand total of 45 years young at that point. So it's possible that this might be his last contract even. But yeah, so what are your thoughts about this, Doug? I know that it's kind of surprising to me that um he's doing such a long deal. I think that that's the biggest surprise about the situation, just that the deal is so long. And it doesn't look like.
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay, there's Doug.
All right, so I agree. Um, the fact that it is so long does indicate to me that this might be his last full deal. The last one, it felt weird because I remember there was, they wanted it to be a 5-year deal last time. He wanted it to be like a 2-year deal, and I think they came together and decided it was going to be like a 3-year deal.
Yeah, it was a 3-year deal.
Yeah, and so it was like that one. I thought that was interesting because this was a guy who was trying to, make sure that he had some negotiating ability in 3 years. And it's like you have to ask yourself, okay, why would he want that? And it's like probably because he wants to consider other options. If he's taken a 5-year deal at this point, I think he's content with just finishing out his career in WWE. So I'm assuming that he got a really good deal. That would be a fair assumption on our part. And I think for that reason, I think it's fair to say that, he's going to be a WWE guy. Probably, even if he doesn't sign another contract, he'll probably be sticking around for a while.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because like if we're, I mean, 5 years now. When we're looking out 5 years, also it's like that's the end of the first leg of the Netflix contract. It is the time when AEW's rights will also be theoretically up too. So there's going to be. It's actually kind of good timing for Kevin if he feels like he would do one more deal after it. I feel like he's kind of at the end of his time by 5 years being over though. I think that
to be fair, he's only 40. So 45 is not like the end of his career, probably.
I maybe not, but considering the types of matches that he does, he likes to have flair in his matches at sometimes, but he doesn't have a style that really breaks the body other than those furniture matches.
Yeah, and ultimately, this is just one of those things where it's hard to know. We need to see what we're looking at in 5 years. But obviously this is a situation where we can stop speculating on Kevin Owens for a couple of years. We can come back in like year 4, see how he's doing, see where he is, and make a judgment call then.
Yeah, and I think that the interesting thing about this is that I think that, at least for me, I don't know how you feel about the classic combo, the two best friends, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. To me, it felt like that if Kevin Owens were to jump, he had a higher potential of where he would be placed on a card in an AEW than Sami Zayn has potential to be placed on a card. So it kind of, by Kevin not jumping, it kind of makes me feel like Sammy probably won't jump either, but I don't know if that's reading too much into things and presuming too much.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think that they'll both be sticking around. Um, I'm assuming that they got a great deal. I really am. And I also am assuming that they talk. I mean, here's the other thing, and it's also why I would not call Kevin Owens a geek, because he dragged this out. He dragged his feet. He clearly did this for negotiating purposes. He made sure that, they waited until the last minute. He made him sweat a little bit, and I'm sure he got a great deal. So I will always defend him for that.
And I would say also that like the way that they, from a booking perspective, also the way that they scripted this was such that this could have been his last story in WWE easily. It was very leaving the territory feel to it, and putting over your big baby face also, and all those kinds of things. Like it
Which
the way
they probably did that because they genuinely had to cover themselves.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Is like it feels like that the people that were trying to put out there that, oh no, he signed months ago, like all of you people, it's like even the project was telling you that wasn't the case, you know. So now that's coming out that, like, yeah, he didn't actually resign until the Rumble. He might have been negotiating a little bit in January, but and like leading up to it, but he didn't get to an agreement until this storyline that he was just doing finished, essentially.
Yeah.
It seems like he leveraged that situation into getting a long, healthy deal out of WWE. He got pushed back up into a world title storyline in a very well regarded match, I would say, for the Royal Rumble. It seems that possibly if Sami Zayn is staying around, then they might get a Mania match between the two of them. So it seems like they've gotten what they wanted out of this contract cycle for Kevin.
I would agree. I think they absolutely did.
So as far as Magnificent Seven go, I would say that this is another nail in the seven, but at the same time, I think that this might be, in your opinion, could this be the case of the person that tried the most?
I don't know. Drew tried a lot. Drew really,
Yeah.
Drew played both companies like a fiddle. That was masterful with him. So I don't know if I could say that Kevin Owens tried as much as Drew.
Well, let's go on to another person that made a contract with WWE related to the Royal Rumble. This one's Jordynne Grace. She, for a long time now, we had been presuming that she would be jumping to WWE, and now it is confirmed that she has signed with WWE. It's not been said whether or not she's going to be main roster or NXT or anything like that, but she has officially joined WWE.
Yeah, I think this is a long time coming. 5-year deal. So she's gonna be there a long time, but she's obviously a big act. She's going to, and she's an interesting one too because she's already kind of independently wealthy. So this isn't like, I doubt it's like a career changing, like money situation for her. But I think she's done everything she could possibly do in TNA, and I get it. It was a great spot for her because she was able to do her like little side projects while showing up for a TNA taping once a month. Um, but yeah, it made a lot of sense for her to make this jump, and congrats to her. And she is now in WWE, and we will be taking her off the tier list.
And then the next one that is Rumble related was Alexa Bliss. We only had her on for a week or two, and she is also a confirmed stay. It was confirmed what we thought. Not on commentary, they were like, yeah, they don't believe the dirt sheets. Well, nobody was saying that she was leaving WWE, really. Everybody was saying that it was contract negotiations, and it was confirmed that it indeed was the contract negotiations. She wanted to have a new deal before coming back. WWE now is trying to act like they wanted the new deal because they were like, oh, well, like, we don't want somebody that we're going to push to not have a healthy contract on them. And that's the narrative that they're now trying to counter with. But yeah, Alexa Bliss confirmed staying with WWE.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the best outcome for all involved. I don't really think that she would fit in. Well, I shouldn't say she wouldn't fit in AEW, but I think that she would be presented as the bigger deal in WWE. I think that WWE ultimately, if she was gonna get the money, she should just stay. And it sounds like, after this little contract snafu, they fixed it, and she is under a new deal. WWE, backed down and gave her the new contract, and now she's in.
So that gets us through the easy ones to talk about here. Let's go for one that's a little bit harder to place. Let's go with Nikki Bella here. So she Oh, and just as a side note, Luke was pointing out that Jordynne Grace technically took a pay cut to join WWE with her added bonuses that she was doing off screen.
Yes.
Um,
And I will say this. It's like I feel like it's weird to try to it's a weird situation to try to like kind of factor that in where it's like, well, like, if she continued to do her OnlyFans and things like that, she could be making more money on the side. And it's like I get that. I mean, that's fair, but it's also like, I don't know how long people want to keep doing that or, after a certain point maybe you just don't want to do that anymore, or and I don't want to, speculate on if she was like fed up with it or really did want to move on or just wanted to be so it's like that it's like it's not an apples to apples comparison. So it's hard for me to say, oh, that's a pay cut or a pay raise because it's like so many variables and too many different things like compared to like just saying like one if it was just like this is what TNA is paying her, this is what WWE is paying her, like Io Shirai, that was a situation where I could say yeah, she took a pay cut because Stardom was paying her more than WWE paid her initially. And this one, I don't know that I necessarily could say that, but I get it. I get that mindset, and it's nothing wrong with it. It's just that I won't address it that way.
so Nikki Bella then this is a weird one to me still, and I'm still it is not very plain to see what's going on here with her. So she appeared as the number 30 in the Women's Royal Rumble. Obviously, you had to put her there if you're not going to put Becky Lynch in there, who has still not reappeared in WWE. I feel like it's getting to the point where it feels like either fumble or something more is going on with Becky Lynch. But we will talk about that once we get more info. Um, with Nikki Bella. She then mentioned on her podcast with her sister Brie that it won't be the end of things with her with WWE. That it wasn't a one-off, but she was very stay tuned about it. She also was like, oh yeah, it'd be great if maybe next time, my sister's right there with me. It comes off like she's trying to tease stuff that might not actually be on paper yet, to me at least.
Hmm.
I don't know how it comes off to you.
So I feel like I need to have a better. I want to talk about this because I think that this could be a road to WrestleMania story that they're going to eventually kind of start fleshing out a little bit. Maybe she'll get proposed again at WrestleMania, just with on John Cena's retirement tour, and that's how that story ends. But I think ultimately, I'm actually not. I mean, here because I'm trying to be. I'm trying to kind of dance around this, but I'll just this. Nikki Bella's had a lot of, you know, tumultuous stuff happening to her in her life. Maybe it's time for maybe she wants to kind of have like a reset. Maybe she wants to, go back and try to find herself again. Maybe this Royal Rumble was part of that, where it's like, hey, let's dip my toes in, see how I'm feeling. And based off of how her reaction was afterwards, it sounds like she wants to keep doing it. Maybe I think she maybe is still in like maybe negotiations with the contract. I think that it sounds like she wants to go back at least in some capacity, and now it's just a matter of how much it's going to cost WWE and whether or not they want to do it. Or so I think that they're still talking. I think we're going to find more out as time goes on, but I would not be surprised at all to see her come back.
So if you were to try to, so first off, do you think that she belongs on the tier list right now as
Yes.
somebody? Okay, where would
Yeah,
you
I do.
where would you place her on the tier list right now? We have her as a lean jump.
I would actually go lean jump. I think lean jump is fair because I tend to think that she wants to do something and she wants to have. And I don't think it's just like one offs. I feel like there's more to this than uh just a Royal Rumble.
Yeah, that's my reason why I'm on the side of just don't have her on the tier list is because I think it's two factors. One, um, they presented her as like a Hall of Famer returning in the Royal Rumble rather than like I mean, she's back kind of a thing. So I kind of part of me is thinking she's not really there for long. The other thing is that it feels very easy to try to set up something that might not be on paper yet for me. So that's why I'm just like saying I'm out on
If
speculation for Nikki Bella, honestly.
I'll put a I'll put a deadline on it. If by the SmackDown at the end of the month, like February 28th SmackDown, if she is not on the show or involved in the show in any way within the next 3 weeks, I would take her off.
Yeah, so it looks like the way that our committee is considering it is thinking that it is now likelier that she will be putting pen to paper and returning to WWE. And for the purposes of our tier list, because she's currently considered an independent talent, not formally signed to a wrestling in-ring contract, that is moving her up the tier list to a likely jump.
Yep. And I think that's I don't know if I would go likely jump. That's fine. I would probably keep her at lean jump, but we'll see.
We shall see. Somebody that we're keeping an eye on, that we have been keeping an eye on for quite some time, is Alex Windsor. She is a great notable name on the British independent scene, featured here in this photograph when she was the Rev Pro Undisputed Women's Champion, which is the belt now Mercedes Moné holds. Alex Windsor this past week was featured on the Jericho Cruise. She had two matches, losing efforts though. One of them was with Toni Storm. I can't remember who the other one was with off the top of my head. But it has been a while since we have looked at her as a potential signing to a major promotion here. The last time that we looked at her was back in September, and that's when we moved her down one tier from toss up to lean stay. She's currently at lean stay. Doug, where are you feeling on her right now?
I would honestly tend to put her. Okay, I'll just say this about her. Obviously, things have quieted down. Like there was this initial idea that maybe she's going to eventually make the jump, and then people were kind of thinking maybe she wouldn't because she wants to stay back home. She is working a lot, and I think either did she just have a match with Jamie Hayter and Eve, or that's coming? Maybe it might be today. But that's coming up. So I think there's a lot of things going on around her, but I think it's time to kind of drop her a bit because we haven't heard any real news or updates. So I think we had her at lean stay. I would go down to likely stay.
Okay. I would say, yeah, and the match with Jamie Hayter occurred yesterday. It
Okay.
appears in Eve, February 7th, which
I'm gonna take a guess that she did not win that match.
let me confirm. Eve 131 Multiverse Rumble. Um, she did not win that match. It was a
Okay.
43 minute match with Jamie Hayter that has very high reviews so far from people. I have not gotten to watch the match, but it seems like it's going to be a match that we're going to be checking out.
Okay. Well,
Also on that card was a
congratulations.
Nina Samuels match against Isla Grace, which sounds fun.
Yeah,
Continue.
I like Nina Samuels. She's a good talker. Anyway, so back to Alex Windsor. Yeah, we're going. I say likely stay.
Yeah, I think that I usually go like every 2 months. Like I want to put somebody down a tier just because I'm like the stove is not so hot for this person. Maybe it's not gonna happen. So I was feeling safe stay, but I think that I'm fine with what you and the committee all are saying, which is just bring her down one tier down to likely stay.
All right, and now I think we just have one more to go over, right?
Yes, and this is one that I wanted to talk about more so than most, I think, is Mina Shirakawa. It has been an interesting time when you look at like we haven't talked about her since November. We kept her as a toss-up back then. There have been no news or rumors since the last vote about her possibly making a jump to a North American promotion, namely AEW. Since losing to Mariah May at the AEW Winter is Coming special in December, she has only appeared in the US twice, and both of those were on New Japan Strong shows. I think that what's going on here is that she's not necessarily jumping to AEW. It's just that was a cross promotional excursion. What do you think, Doug?
I feel like it ultimately was just a cross promotional excursion, and I think that people were reading too much into it, and especially now that she is injured and out indefinitely, even more of a reason to kind of drop her down the tier list. I think toss up was fair at one point where we didn't really know, but I think it's kind of clear that at this point, there hasn't been any talk on it. So I think the time has passed on Mina Shirakawa. She's probably going back to Stardom, is just going to stay there. So for that reason, I'd go down to like likely stay.
Yeah, I was feeling more in that region as well, more towards likely stay, just because I think that if I'm both combining my, like there hasn't been a lot of talk kind of thought process, plus the fact that I already was not feeling like it was super hot on the possibility of her jumping formally to AEW. I was thinking to bring her down 2 tiers. So we both think that, but unfortunately it's not. This is a democracy. Still, so it's just going to be 1 tier this week, dropping down to lean stay for Mina Shirakawa.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'd go lower, but I'm fine with that.
So here is what the tier list looks like for this week as of February 8th.
A lot of likely stays now, I see.
What was that?
I said we have a lot of likely stays now.
Yeah, we do. So I kind of widified the tier list again because now we have the space to do such.
Yes. All right, I will read through them. So on Safe Jump, we have Hikuleo and Speedball Mike Bailey. Speedball, man, what's going on with him? We probably talk about him at some point.
Yeah, we're gonna have to talk about him at some point because it doesn't feel like it's as safe of a jump, or it might just be that we don't know what's going on, and they're just waiting on to debut him. But allegedly, he's going to sign with AEW or has signed, or it's kind of fluid. It sounds like.
Yes, and then we have Likely Jump, Ray Phoenix, Ricky Starks, Malachi Black, Josh Alexander, and Nikki Bella. For Lean Jump, we have Zilla Fatu and Ninja Mac. Toss Up, Beth Phoenix, Michael Oku, Baron Corbin, Persephone, El Hijo Dale, Dr. Wagner Jr. Lean Stay, we have Joe Hendry, Leon Slater, Samantha Irvin, Indy Hartwell, Tegan Knox, Matt Cardona, Mina Shirakawa. For Likely Stay, Sami Zayn, AJ Styles, Dragon Dia, Kofi Kingston, Xavier Woods, Mayu Iwatani, Danhausen, and Alex Windsor. Long list. And then finally, for Safe Stay, we have Suri, Utami Hayashishita, Hook, Street Profits, and Shinsuke Nakamura. All right. So that is going to be our show. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you next time. Anything else to add, Ryan?
No. Just make sure to follow us on our socials, on our Substack, and like and subscribe to us here on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube to get updated when we go live next. Until then, I'm Ryan.
I'm Doug.
All right. Stay safe, everybody. Have a